Come back. Animal rights groups are demanding answers after a baboon was shot and killed in an upmarket Cape Town suburb 9 days ago. Beauty Without Cruelty is offering 8,000 rand to anyone with information leading to the arrest of the person responsible and has called the shooting despicable. The action is punishable by law under the Animal Protection Act. I'm joined now by Beauty Without Cruelty's national chairperson, Tony Brockhoven. Tony, thank you very much for your time this evening. Can you tell us briefly what happened to this baboon?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. It would seem that monitors who were volunteers were in the neighborhood when they heard the sound of glass breaking and what sounded like a rifle shot. Then saw in an adjoining neighbor's property where they were given permission to enter a baboon in the corner who was clearly injured, who managed to get onto the wall and escape. And ultimately what happened was NCC and the SPCA were called and managed to get the baboon, dart and take her away to safety, but unfortunately her injuries were such that she ended up needing to be euthanized. This whole incident is absolutely appalling, should never have happened. And sadly, because our authorities have let us down, despite the promises that things are going to change and that there will be public interaction and that things will be made better, while we are all busy waiting, the animals are suffering.
Tony, residents and activists alike are blaming the city of Cape Town for withdrawing rangers that monitor baboon troops in the area. What was their reasoning for the withdrawal of those rangers?
Well, part of it was funding, and ultimately the city alone, and I'm not trying to justify their actions in any way, shape or form, but ultimately the city has a specific job, but the care and maintenance and management of wildlife is up to both Cape Nature and Sandparks. And so between the three of them, they have failed. And the city was spending an inordinate amount of money on rangers, but there was no time frame given. All of a sudden, the rangers were just removed, and it happens to be a particularly dangerous and busy section of the city where people drive like lunatics, and that's part of the thing. Why we have what we call the baboon angels. Who are volunteers who take time out of their day every single day to make sure that the baboons are cared for and given safe access to crossroads and so on. And the lack of the rangers who would monitor and ensure that the baboons are kept safe are no longer there. But over and above that, after years of talking and begging and pleading and shouting and screaming and trying to be reasonable and all the rest of it. While the city does a great many things really well, when it comes to our wildlife, they have failed. And we are still waiting for baboon-proof bins, for example. And, you know, the city will say, well, that's waste management, and waste management will say that they don't have the funding, and it gets shifted from pillar to post, which is just tragic. And that is a simple issue that would make a huge difference, because the fact of the matter is that these baboons have been shunted into areas that are growing ever smaller. They're not being given the opportunity to disperse as they should because we are all in the way. And there's no such thing as a raiding baboon. Humans raid. Baboons forage, and we have made it easy for them to forage in the urban space because we refuse to make sure that our bins are baboon-proof. We won't stop littering. We're not taking companies to task for leaving out their waste, so that's not being managed correctly. And we're demonizing the baboons when all they're trying to do is survive in an area that we have forced them into a situation.
Tony, I want to interrupt you there and make it very clear that the killing of a baboon by a member of the public is a criminal act and punishable by law. However, there are protocols in place which allow for the sanctioned killing by officials of baboons that have been deemed to be troublesome. However, there's a debate raging about whether that method solves the problem of baboons coming into urban areas at all. And that urban baboon program that you're speaking of promised those baboon-proof bins, bylaws, to try and actively deal with the situation. But as you say, that's not been the case. That has not been delivered. And the situation, unless we change our approach, is putting both humans and baboons in danger in such close proximity. So how do we ensure that these parties work together going forward?
Well, that was what we were hoping would happen when Barbara Creasy came down to Cape Town and had held a public meeting with all the relevant parties and insisted that SANParks, Cape Nature and the city work together to make sure that things happen. I do just want to say, because I think this is really important, baboons do not attack. They do not go out and look for trouble. They will only try and defend themselves when cornered. And we must also remember that when they show their teeth, that is a sign of fear. While we associate smiling and showing teeth, when primates do this, hairy primates do this, it is a sign of fear. It is a grimace. And the fact that we've demonized them and we keep using language that criminalizes them, it creates a system whereby people are unnecessarily afraid of baboons who just want to do what they do. They just want to be able to forage, raise their young, and behave as baboons do in peace. They're not interested in causing havoc and chaos for humans. It is absolutely criminal. It's also barbaric and unethical and despicable on every level that I can think of, that a resident in an area where there's absolutely no excuse for not having baboon-proof bars and bins. Because here's the thing, people move into an area knowing that there are wild animals. And they may have been there for a while, or they've just moved. And yes, things do change, but we're supposedly the superior ones. We're supposedly the ones with the intelligence. So we should be the ones making things easy for us and easy for them, because we can coexist. It does happen in towns around the country, and there's absolutely no excuse for this kind of behavior. It is completely unacceptable.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us tonight and helping to raise some awareness around this issue. Beauty Without Cruelty National Chairperson Tony Brockhoven commenting there on the shooting of a pregnant female baboon in the Cape Town city area just 9 days ago.